As many of you may know, the Diablo 4 Server Slam happening May 12th through 14th is coming up very soon within this next week. Now, during this time, if you didn't participate in the beta, you have a very short window of time to earn all of the beta rewards, but there's also a new reward, a reward where you can earn an Ashava horn. And you only have 48 hours to do this. To earn the Ashava horn, you have to reach level 20, and then you have to participate in killing an Ashava. Now, the first 24 hours, there's going to be no Ashavas. You're going to have that opportunity to level up. And then the second 24 hours, the Ashava will appear, I think, every 2 or 3 hours, will respawn, and you'll have a chance to go in there and participate in killing the Ashava with other players. Now, in order to level up effectively and to create a powerful character, a lot of people built out specific builds or designed specific builds for each of the different character types during the beta that can be very useful and effective in helping you earn all of those rewards during this 48 hours. And I already went over one of these builds specifically with the Rogue. Rogue is my favorite type of character, but there's a specific design with some variations that people kind of play around with. And this was one of the briefest and easiest synopses of this specific build that I've found online that I want to go over with you guys. I think that you'll enjoy this.
More D4 builds in the future, min-maxed, then stab that like button and let the build begin. We'll start off with the skill tree since it's the easiest. You want to take Puncture as your basic skill.
Now, a lot of people recommend to take Puncture as the basic skill because it increases your chance of critical hit.
Basic skills do not cost any energy, but Puncture is the best melee skill as it not only can hit at range, but once you pick up this node, it'll shoot 3 projectiles out instead, and if you hit the enemy
or makes them vulnerable. And so, but you'll find that this specific skill isn't that important because once you develop the later skills, you'll rarely even be using this.
With at least 2, you inflict vulnerable status on them, which is basically defense down, increasing your damage a ton. Then once you unlock your first core skill, get Twisting Blade. This is the main skill that makes the build
So Twisting Blade is one of 3 important parts of this build. Twisting Blade is kind of the basis for it, but there's 2 other parts of this build you're going to see later on that really make this build effective at dishing out tons and tons of damage.
Your damage skill. You want to max this out by around level 20. This will stick blades into the enemy, and after a second or 2, they explode out and return to you. So the game plan is to use Puncture to inflict vulnerability, then spam Twisting Blades, and then use your agility skills to quickly leap to another target, and the blades will return to you, hitting everyone in that path. But once you get this node here, now whenever they return to you, they lower the cooldown of other skills by 1 second, up to 3 depending on the number of enemies you hit with the returning blade.
And that's the important part. That's the point I was talking about. Later on, you won't even really be using Puncture because you keep reducing your cooldown so effectively and so quickly with this ability.
So an amazing node for getting good uptime on all your skills. Then you unlock agility skills, and for this you want Shadow Step. This is your main movement skill you use to make use of Twisting Blades. It also gives you Unstoppable, meaning that if you were, say, frozen, you can break out of freeze simply by using a skill, which is cool. And you want the crit node for 8% crit for 3 seconds whenever you use it. Now, you can get dash 2, but due to
a lot of people like Shadow Step. I was kind of ho-hum about it. I thought it was okay, but it's kind of what he said. The nice thing about it is it lets you move through enemies really quickly. It does increase how quickly you move for a short period of time. So it is a good ability.
Limited skill slots, I opted out of it. This is great in conjunction with Shadow Step to zip around even more, but Shadow Imbue explosions right now are too good for clear that I felt dash wasn't necessary for early game, but it's up to you. Then we got Subterfuge skills, pretty much only taking Dark Shroud. This gives you damage reduction balls that float around you and are simple.
Dark Shroud is actually pretty important just because you're not, the rogue isn't a very beefy character. He can take on a lot of damage, and you don't want to, he's a little bit more susceptible to those 1 or 2 hit dying and those in 1 or 2 hits. And so this really effectively helps reduce that.
For surviving better. I guess you can sub these out too if you don't care about dying. Let's say on softcore, you can sub this out for dash, but you can have Dark Shroud up pretty often. And if you take this node, then having 2 or more equals 10% crit chance, which is really strong for like bosses where you have a bunch pre-prepped and can get that early Zerg DPS on them with Twisting Blades. Shadow Imbue is too good in my opinion. This gives your core skill.
So remember how I told you that there are 3 parts? The first part is Twisting Blades, and this is the second part, the Shadow Imbue, okay? Remember that. Twisting Blades, Shadow Imbue.
Deals 2 shots at dealing shadow damage, which as I explained earlier, makes enemies explode on death. Now 2 uses does suck, and you do waste those uses on just 1 Twisting Blade and 1 Shadow Step. Unfortunately, Shadow Step does eat one of your uses, but because of Twisting's cooldown reduction node, you can get them back fairly fast, though you do need to reapply them often. The trick here you can do is just hold the assign button down to automatically reapply them whenever they're available, so you don't have to worry about managing cooldowns as much. And you are going to want this consuming shadows node here, giving you 10 to 30 energy back per explosion. Now, I only get the first one here, as way back up here, I do get siphoning strikes. This is basically life leech on crits, which I have around
to kind of get life back, right? So we talked about Dark Shroud in terms of reducing enemies' damage on you, and then the siphoning strikes helps you regenerate some of your life. Really kind of important to kind of make your guy a little bit beefier.
20 to 30% crit chance, and this is just quality of life and keeps my health topped off. And with this, I barely have to use potions because of it, so I do like it. But for softcore, maybe not that worth it early game, so you might want to dump those points into more consuming shadow upgrades for more energy consistency. But either way, the life leech or consume shadow nodes should be upgraded last after level 20. One thing to note, if you do not go Shadow Imbue, then you might need to run Concealment to gain 40 energy per sneak. As spamming Twisting Blades in a group event.
After the server slam, when the game goes live, play around with all these. You can create your own builds, make something interesting. But if you really want those rewards and you've never done a build before, you don't know how to create and effectively create a build that dishes out a ton of damage, do the Shadow Imbue, get the rewards, and then start playing around with different builds.
Enemies where you won't proc inner sight as much will eat your energy resources fast, so be careful there. Shadow Imbue or Concealment are your energizers for standard play, so not the bosses. And lastly, during the beta, you can unlock your ultimate skill, which for this build will be Shadow Clone. Arutu Gang Rise. This summons a clone of you that mimics your attacks, so having 2 Twisting Blades being spammed constantly.
Shadow Clone is another great ability. With the Shadow Clone, you essentially do somewhere between 60 to 80% of your original character's damage. So it's not quite double, but it's a lot more. It's still not the third part of this build, though. We'll get to that in just a minute.
Absolutely melts bosses, killing them in seconds. You can also use this periodically while going through a dungeon at the start of a dungeon to shred stuff as well. Just make sure to have it pre-prepped for a boss, obviously. And if you get this 1 dagger shrine here, then the game becomes stupid. You clear insanely fast, so super strong skill. Make sure to get the upper nodes as well as the final levels from 23 to 25. So those are the rogue skills. Now quickly, for specialization, I believe this is unlocked from doing a story quest for your true potential, or maybe it's after a certain level, I don't remember, but this is like extra bonus passives. While combo points can give you insane damage boosts, I think you get like, I don't know, over 100% maybe. Inner Sight with Twisting Blades is bonkers against single targets. This can give you infinite...
This is the third part of the build. Inner Sight with the Twisting Blades, because as I told you, as you hit the enemy, when those blades come back, they actually hit other enemies on their return, and through that, you're getting several attacks that have marked enemies every time it hits a different enemy. And what it does is it regenerates your energy gauge super fast.
energy for a few seconds, meaning you can spam twisting blades, then by the time the effect wears off, your blades will return to you and spin, building up inner sight again nearly instantly for unlimited energy again. And with Shadow Clone, obviously this combo is how I am melting stuff, so definitely recommended over combo.
There's those 3 parts to the build, but there's something else. There's a legendary item effect that we're going to go into in a minute.
Points, unless there's better ways to sustain energy, which in the beta there currently is not. But even then, combo points requires the use of basic skills, so the damage gain is offset by using a basic skill versus Inner Sight where you can just spam twirling infinitely. So I think the DPS kind of evens out, but Inner Sight's more consistent. Now for gear, the complicated part. The number 1 legendary aspect you need to hunt for is the Twisting Blade one. This lets the blades orbit around you, returning for a short period, and if you use Shadow Step or Dash or
Okay, this is the legendary item ability that you should be looking out for. Now, during the beta, they put out legendary items like candy. I mean, they were everywhere. But supposedly, during the server slam, they're not going to be as prevalent. So you may not find this. But the Twisting Blades orbit. Now, what this does is, with the Twisting Blades, you put in the blades into the enemy. And after a period of time, those blades leave the enemy and they come back to you, to your character, and they hit enemies on their return. What this does is the blades actually orbit around your character a few times before returning into your character. And every time that they orbit around and hit one of the enemies, that counts as another marked enemy attack, which essentially regenerates all of your special energy. So it's always at full capacity. And so you never have to worry about regenerating your energy. So you're just always pressing the right button. It's incredible. So there's the 3 main abilities from the build, and then that special legendary ability that you should be looking for in your legendary items. This is the build that I recommend for you guys if you're going to be playing as a rogue during the server slam. Let me know what you think. Also, hey, if you like this type of content, Diablo 4, I'm going to be doing a lot of Diablo 4 gameplay. As I find really good videos made about Diablo 4, I'm going to be covering those as well, sharing that with you guys. I'm a new streamer. Go ahead, like, and subscribe. I appreciate you, and you guys have a good day.